Adebimpe had everything: a marble-floored mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and a husband who spared no expense. But she never cooked, never cleaned, and no maid ever lasted more than a week. Each one was never good enough. Then one humid afternoon in Eco Royale, a quiet, smiling maid named Myam walked through the gates. What happened next would shatter Adebimpe's perfect routine, expose the cracks in her marriage, and turn the mansion's glittering calm into a silent battlefield. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the house isn't the one with the wealth. It's the one with nothing to lose. Adebimpe thought she was hiring just another maid she could fire at will. Instead, she had just invited in the one woman who would change everything she thought she knew about power, pride, and respect. Adebimpe never cooked. She never cleaned. Every maid was never good enough. Until one day a quiet, smiling maid entered the mansion, and everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in Eco Royale, the kind of city where skyscrapers gleamed under the sun and the streets smelled faintly of expensive perfume from passing cars. The Oladipo mansion, perched on a private hill, was a monument to wealth. Marble floors so polished they reflected your face, chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, and a living room bigger than most people's entire homes. Inside, Adebimpe sat on a cream velvet sofa, scrolling through her phone, ignoring the soft clinking of glass from the house staff cleaning the dining table. She was dressed in silk pajamas, hair wrapped in a designer scarf, sipping orange juice freshly squeezed by the chef she'd already decided she didn't like. Her husband, Tunde Oladipo, was the kind of man who could close a billion-naira deal over lunch and still be home in time for dinner. Tall, calm, and endlessly patient, he had learned to navigate life with a wife who saw house chores as a personal insult. They had been married for 6 years, and in that time, no maid had lasted more than 3 months. "I'm not asking for much, Tunde," Adebimpe said that morning, her voice dripping with frustration. "I just need staff who understand standards." Tunde didn't look up from his laptop. "Bimpe, last week you said Sandra was perfect." "Yes, well, Sandra turned out to be lazy." "You mean she refused to polish the wine glasses twice a day?" Adebimpe rolled her eyes. "This is not a debate. I've already told the agency to send someone new." The doorbell rang just then, and the head of security's voice echoed from the intercom. "Madam, the new maid is here." Adebimpe leaned back with a sigh. "Let's see how long this one lasts." Moments later, the front door opened, and in walked Myam. She wasn't like the other maids, no nervous glances, no fidgeting. She wore a neatly pressed gray uniform, simple black flats, and carried a small, well-worn leather bag. Her face held a quiet smile that didn't seem forced. "Good morning, Ma," she said softly, her voice steady. Adebimpe gave her a slow, assessing look. We'll see if you can keep up." Myam's eyes didn't drop to the floor like most people's did under Adebimpe's scrutiny. Instead, she replied, still smiling, "I believe I can, Ma." Something in that calm tone unsettled Adebimpe, just slightly. But she brushed it off. After all, in her mind, every maid eventually revealed a flaw. What she didn't know was that Myam's arrival would be the last time she had full control of her home, and herself. If the walls of the Oladipo mansion could speak, they would tell the stories of maids who had come and gone like shadows. Some had lasted weeks, others mere days, each sent away with the same cold words from Adebimpe. "You're not good enough." In Eco Royale's gossip circles, her reputation had already taken root. At champagne brunches in the high-rise lounges of Victoria Crest Towers, her friends whispered behind manicured hands. "She's on her 16th maid in 4 years." One woman left after just 2 nights. Apparently, she fired someone because the pillow arrangement wasn't symmetrical. To Adebimpe, these were not insults, they were proof of her refined taste. It began early in their marriage. Tunde had insisted they hire live-in staff so Adebimpe could focus on enjoying life. The first maid, Ruth, was dismissed for walking too loudly on the marble floors. The second, Clara, didn't last 2 weeks. She had ironed Tunde's shirts but had missed one button crease. The third, Beezy, had the audacity to serve toast that was slightly darker than golden brown. "I worked too hard to come home to mediocrity," Adebimpe had told Tunde during yet another argument about her firing spree. He had tried to reason with her. "Bimpe, even the best staff will make small mistakes. That's life." "No, Tunde. That's their life. Not mine." By the time Myam stepped into their home, the staff agency had practically run out of candidates willing to work for the Oladipos. Some applicants had even rejected the high salary just to avoid the humiliation of Madame Adebimp's standards. Tund had warned her that morning. If this one doesn't stay, Bimp, I'm not hiring anyone else. You'll manage the house yourself. She had scoffed. Please, Tund. That's an empty threat. You know I don't touch chores. But deep down, something in his tone made her uneasy. Tund wasn't a man who made idle threats. So, as she watched Myam unpack her modest belongings into the staff quarters, Adebimpe thought to herself, I'll give her 2 weeks at best. What she didn't realize was that Myam wasn't like the others. And for the first time, Adebimpe's endless firing list might have reached its final name. The morning sun spilled through the tall glass windows of the Oladipo mansion, casting gold on the marble floors. By the time Adebimpe came downstairs in her silk robe, Myam was already moving silently around the kitchen. It wasn't the nervous, frantic kind of movement Adebimpe was used to seeing in her staff. No, Myam moved with calm precision, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. Her hands worked efficiently, slicing fruit into perfectly even cubes, flipping pancakes that looked like they belonged in a magazine, arranging the breakfast table with quiet elegance. Adebimpe stood at the doorway, arms folded, scanning for something to criticize. The flowers were fresh. The plates gleamed. Even the cutlery was arranged at exact angles. You didn't set the table runner, Adebimpe said finally, spotting what she thought was her victory. Myam looked up, still smiling. I noticed, Ma. I thought the marble looked better without it today, since the flowers are bright. That answer threw Adebimpe off balance. Most maids would have apologized instantly. Instead, Myam had a reason. And worse, it made sense. Adebimpe muttered, unwilling to admit she liked the arrangement. Throughout the morning, Myam worked without fuss. She cleaned the grand staircase without missing a single step. She polished the chandelier without needing to be told. She didn't hover around, waiting for instructions. Yet she never overstepped. Tund noticed. Passing through the living room, he raised an eyebrow at his wife. She seems capable. We'll see, Adebimpe replied sharply, sipping her coffee. But she couldn't ignore the strange shift in her home's atmosphere. The place felt calmer. Even the chef, who usually kept his head down to avoid Adebimpe's temper, seemed more relaxed. Later that afternoon, Adebimpe called Myam to the main lounge. I like my staff to understand who they work for, she began, using her usual tone of authority. Yes, Ma, Myam said, meeting her eyes with quiet respect. You will follow my standards. Exactly. No shortcuts. Myam's smile didn't waver. Of course, Ma. I believe if a job is worth doing, it's worth doing well. The words weren't unusual, but something in the way she said them, steady, almost equal, unsettled Adebimpe. She didn't show it, but as Myam walked away, she felt something she hadn't felt toward a maid in years. The faint, unwelcome awareness that she might not be the one in control. And for Adebimpe Oladipo, that was dangerous territory. The next morning, Adebimpe decided to test Myam. She pulled one of her most delicate dresses from the walk-in closet, a cream silk gown imported from Italy, and handed it to her with slow, deliberate emphasis. This dress, she said, must be ironed exactly how I want it. If you damage it, you're done. Most maids would have panicked at her tone. Myam simply nodded, took the dress gently, and walked to the laundry room without another word. Adebimpe lingered nearby, pretending to scroll through her phone while secretly watching.